Sheffield's 16th staging of the FIM X-Trial World Championship is the opening round of the 2016 campaign. 8 riders from 5 different countries contest the latest title race with events across Europe's trials heartland. "2016, a season of change." Representing Sweden, Eddie Karlsson, the youngest rider in the field, was last of the permanent riders in the 2015 championship, enjoying a best finish of 5th in the Spanish Grand Prix. He hopes that his selection for this season's contest, ahead of fellow youngsters Jorge Casales, Franz Kadlec and Jaime Busto, can be justified to the organisers by making the final in at least one round. Alexandre Ferrer spent much of 2015 looking for results to boost his chances of a place in the 2016 World Championship. Having secured the spot, he has the tough task of improving on 5th in the last X-Trial campaign and to eat into the massive deficit to the 4 lead Spaniards. Ferrer's top 4 task is made even harder by the inclusion of Takahisa Fujinami, who missed the 2015 campaign with a knee injury, but tells us he's made a specific focus on learning new tricks during the winter, with one clear aim: a resurgence in 2016. Gironi Fajardo has made the surprise winter move to the struggling Vertigo team, whose bike could only manage 6th in last year's X-Trial World Championship. But after an interrupted winter of preparations, more mechanical than physical, Fajardo hopes that his move will give him new impetus to make often predicted strides forward in the sport. Albert Cabastan enters the 2016 season as the last X-Trial winner after his 2015 victory in Oviedo. Although he's remained with Sherco for 2016, the bike has had a complete overhaul during the winter, to the extent that he feels he's competing on new machinery, like 2 of his main rivals. After the tribulations of a 2015 season fraught with financial difficulties surrounding the Gas factory, Adam Raga found a new home in September with the newly founded TRS team. He's had plenty of time to get to grips with his new steed and made it a championship-winning bike in the Trial of Nations last year. The 2015 campaign saw Tony Bowes' omnipotence challenged for the first time. The 9 times champion's 5-year run of consecutive victories was ended, and 3 different riders took to the top step of the podium in 6 events. It would take a brave man to bet against him, though, in a discipline he's dominated in recent seasons. Up to 13,000 spectators are expected in the Sheffield Arena for the 2016 British Grand Prix, with 5 riders hoping to add their names to the competition's Roll of Honour and 3 targeting a return to the top in the championship chase. The 7 permanent riders were joined by the first wildcard of the 2016 season, home representative James Dable. And the British rider would be out in the first pair alongside Eddie Karlsson. The Swede opened his X-Trial account in 2015 with 3 consecutive last-place finishes, but by the end of the campaign had found his feet with 5th, 7th and 6th places to round out the season. Hopes that he could further improve that form looked dashed in the early part of qualifying in Sheffield, though, as he took a Section 1-5. James Dable had something to prove in Sheffield after his omission from the 2016 starting lineup. In as a wildcard for his home event, the Vertigo rider gave the crowd something to cheer by becoming the first rider through the pipes, 11 seconds inside on time for a clean. With no clear marker as to what the qualification pace would be, though, and with Karlsson failing early in each section, Dable struggled to avoid high scoring. The British representative failed each of sections 2 and 3, but battled through section 4 well with a single mark on time. Eddie Carlson's dramas continued with a broken spoke in his back wheel following a Section 4 fall. And he rounded off a day to forget with 2 more failed sections for a maximum tally of 30 marks. Eliminated at the back of the pack, the Swede will have the disadvantage of starting in the opening pair in Barcelona. Keen to set down the strongest target possible, James Dable came into Section 6 on a tally of 16 and could ill afford any further marks with the 6 highest seeds still to ride. He conceded 1 with a dab on the section's highest truck, and with time elapsing was already on 3 heading into the final obstacles of the section. Another mark for leaning, and it was a 5-mark score for Dable, gallingly just 5 seconds short of what would have been an impressive 3-mark effort. 9 marks clear of Eddie Carlson, Dable's 21-mark score looked even early on to be unlikely to see him through to the final. 2015 fifth-place finisher Alexandre Ferrer was next out, alongside Japan's returning star Takehisa Fujinami. The oldest rider in the field, Fujinami sat out the 2015 campaign with injury and managed just 6th in 2014. But he immediately stepped above Ferrer and Dable in the standings by becoming the first rider through the challenging Section 2. Looking for his first X-Trial victory since 2004 and his first Sheffield podium since 2009, Fujinami pressed on through the blocks to the section's most challenging step. With no rider having passed the ramp and the veteran moving into uncharted territory, he had to use all of his experience and 2 attempts to make it up. The first attempt had cost him a mark on observation, and the second, more successful run did as well. Even with 1 mark factored in on time, a 3-mark total was the best effort of the first 4 riders through the section. Fujinami was also the first rider successfully through Section 3, Alexandre Ferrer having already balked at the cylinders. Just 1 mark for a dab early in the section, and Fujinami was now guaranteed to beat Dable, and 6 marks clear of Ferrer. Halfway through the lap, the Frenchman seemed pitched in a battle to get the better of James Dable, his perennial rival through the 2015 campaign. Dable and Ferrer had notched identical score charts through the opening 3 sections, but Ferrer dropped off that pace with a 2-mark score in Section 4, the first for footing across the lettering on the Red Bull obstacle, and the second on time as he moved on to a provisional total of 12 with 2 sections remaining. Fujinami was expected to pose the stiffest challenge to the leading 4 Spaniards, but was unfortunate in seeding position, leading out the big hitters. He added another mark early in Section 5, much to his own frustration, but he earned the applause of the Sheffield Arena as the first rider to make it up the section's tallest step. His over-exuberance cost him 1 mark as he overshot his landing, and time elapsed to leave him on 3 for the section, and a total of 9 from 5. Alexandre Ferrer was now consigned to sitting below Fujinami on the leaderboard, but needed to get through Section 6 to overhaul James Dable. The Frenchman worked through the section faster, remaining clean where Dable had dropped marks on observation. And although he dropped 1 mark for time, the result was enough to move provisionally second and above his British rival. The remaining 4 riders failed to beat his 14-mark total. Albert Cabestan won the final round of the 2015 campaign and started the new season optimistic of finally breaking into the battle between Tony Bowe and Adam Raga in X-Trial competition. And it was a confident start for the 2002 world champion, who was the first rider to clean each of sections 2, 3 and 4. By the end of his impressive sequence, he was already guaranteed a place in the final. Gironi Fajardo made his Vertigo debut in Sheffield, looking to haul the bike to its first podium finish. He dropped his first marks of the day in section 3, slipping behind Albert Cabestan in the process. Nonetheless, at the halfway mark, he was 12 up on Fujinami's target tally with 3 sections still to ride. Cabestan was now battling for seeding position with his place in the final already assured. He dropped his first marks of the lap on section 5, missing out on time by just 3 seconds and accruing a single mark on observation. He remains the provisional leader with a section in hand. Gironi Fajardo impressed up the step to depose Cabestan, his first real challenge of the night. And although he missed out on time as well, a 1-mark score was enough to pull the deficit between the two rivals to just a single mark with 1 section to ride. None of the 4 riders to approach the logs and rocks had managed to clean the section, and Albert Cabestan quickly fell victim to its challenge as he was forced to take a dab to make it over the upright trunk. He accrued 2 further marks on the section, falling 4 seconds short on time and conceding another mark on observation for a lap total of 5. Gironi Fajardo was looking for a 1-mark score to overhaul Cabestan for a provisional lead, and his strategy was clearly to throw caution to the wind and make up marks on time as he attacked the section at pace. That tactic, though successful in getting him through in under 60 seconds, saw him drop 2 marks on observation and tie with Cabestan on a 5-mark lap total. Both riders progressed safely through to the final, 9 marks clear of Fujinami. The eagerly anticipated debut of the TRS after 3 months of preparation for Adam Raga. And aside from a small mechanical problem for which the 4-time world champion called a timeout, it was plain sailing for the Spaniard. Section 3 was one of 4 consecutive cleans to open his account with a new team, as he matched Albert Cabestan's impressive early lap scoring. Leading out Tony Bow, Raga continued to apply the pressure by charging through confidently and taking a ride in hand with 0 marks to his name. Mistakes are rare for Tony Bow in extra competition, a discipline in which he excels. But although his participation in the final was never really in doubt, shock fall in section 3 would leave his seeding position up in the air. Surprise 5-mark score left him already on the same tally as Albert Cabestan and Gironi Fajardo, but with 3 sections still to complete. Adam Raga finally drops the first mark of his qualifying lap on section 5, 1 mark for leaning as he reached to the top of the skips. He rushed on through the obstacles, becoming the first rider through in under 60 seconds. Tony Bow was the only competitor through section 5 clean, narrowing Raga's advantage to just 4 marks. To remain tied with Cabestan and Fajardo, Bow would need to clean the final section as well. Both Raga and Bow worked through faultlessly and within time, leaving Raga on just 1 mark from 6 sections and Bow in a 3-way tie on 5. An outstanding first appearance for the TRS team under the leadership of 7 times world champion Jordi Terres. The Legend's new bike making its X-Trail debut in Sheffield, and Adam Raga topping the leaderboard in its first outing. Significant gap between the top 4 and the 4 eliminated riders. Just 4 marks separating the Spanish stars, with Carlsen, Daybil, Ferrer and Fujinami all eliminated behind.
Then everyone can go for a little bit of a break before Danny McCaskill comes on. And after Danny, it's the final.
Yeah, last section quite going fast, you know, and just for in 1 minute. I want to inside the 1 minute, so a little bit nervous. But yeah, I'm happy for starting the season. After 1 year, stopped the Indo, so yeah, I'm quite happy for the result.
I'm pretty disappointed with my results. I think I could have done a lot better. Not necessarily qualify, but I think Fuji was within my grasp. I made big mistakes in the sections with the largest obstacles, so quite a lot of disappointment. Even with some pain in my hand, I managed to get through though, so now it's on to the next round. A clear pecking order established in Sheffield once again, but the top 4 seemed closer than ever. Fujinami and Ferrer will have to work hard to achieve their goals of spaces in the final this season. Only 1 represented nationality, but 4 different manufacturers in the final. First strike for the TRS, with Adam Raga topping the leaderboard in qualifying, and Gironi Fajardo also impressing on his new machine. Albert Cabestan will be first out in the final, having lost out in the double lane races to decide the starting order. Cabestan, Fajardo, Raga and Bow, the starting order for the grand final here in Sheffield. First up, Albert Cabestan on section number 1. A series of hollow pipes laid out in a V-shape here, forcing the riders to negotiate a near 180-degree turn at the midpoint of the section. It's the easiest in theory, at least. Albert Cabestan, the first rider out, the oldest of the 4 finalists at the age now of 35. Maintaining such a high level within the sport, was world champion back in 2002. And he's making this first section look as easy as we were promised. Halfway through the section and well inside on time as it stands. Albert Cabestan reaching up then onto those hollow pipes, just trying to ensure that the tyres don't slip down into the cylinders themselves. He's up and on top of the final ingot and through. 42.5 seconds for Albert Cabestan, clean on section number 1. No errors there.
Now you can either look at the scoreboard, also look at the
Gironi Fajardo next up to tackle the section. His minder just blowing away the dust from Cabestan's run to ensure maximum traction for the Vertigo rider. He's underway the moment that axle of the front tyre passes the white line and he's into the section. Gironi Fajardo, who missed the podium here in 2015, if he makes it into the top 3 here tonight, it'll be the first time that the Vertigo has made it onto the podium. represented by James Dable last season. Gironi Fajardo, the lead rider and the permanent rider from the Vertigo team in the X-Trial World Championship this year. And like Albert Cabastan before him, making this first section look pretty simple. The expectation is that the sections will be harder in the grand final than in the qualifying lap, but so far it's two riders through on clean in section 1. So the big two of Adam Raga and Tony Bowe are the riders now under pressure. They need to run clean like the two riders before them to remain in touch for the lead position here tonight. Adam Raga is next up. Reigning world number 2, of course, in his first season on the TRS after that winter move from the Gas factory. A one-brand rider for the majority of his career, watched on here by his minder as he makes it to the halfway mark and nudges through the turn. The 2005 British Grand Prix winner hasn't won here in Sheffield since then, because every season since then has been won by Tony Bowe, but Adam Raga certainly doing well in the qualifying stage to get the better of Bowe and hoping to do the same, replicate that form in the final. Section 1, he's through clean. That's 3 riders now on a clean from section 1. Of course, in theory, it's an advantage to be the last rider up, to see how the other 3 riders have progressed their way through the final, but it will leave Tony Bowe under some pressure throughout the night to just try and maintain his status. A serial winner here in Sheffield, the 9 times world champion, now in his 10th season with the Honda team. Making swift progress through this section 1. He's reached the turn faster than any of the other 3 before him. Just needs to stay error-free here, and he will be through with a clean like the 3 riders before him. Up on the back wheel then to land precisely on the edge of the cylinder. Very narrow contact patch there for the riders, with it being hollow, but Tony Bowe, like the 3 riders before him, has made it look easy, and that's a clean for all 4 riders in section 1. And that's only going to increase the pressure on the remaining 5 sections now, because any error will be more costly than it would have been if there were marks dropped by other riders in each of the sections. All 4 clean through section 1. Albert Cabastan next up onto section 2. 2 challenging inverted V-shapes here, forming the most difficult of the assembled wooden crates. Not the toughest of the sections by any stretch of the imagination, but just avoiding clipping the bike and dropping marks over the crests of the blocks is a bit of a challenge, and you can see that exemplified there as Albert Cabastan actually has to put a foot down to lift the bike up off the sump. He is going to accrue a mark there. 1 error noted by the observer. So that's the first mark of the final, dropped by Albert Cabastan. Some of these blocks angled away from the riders, so precision absolutely key here. Albert Cabastan bridging across the block, but then as he makes the leap, he has to put his right foot down. That's a second mark on observation then for Albert Cabastan. The final's starting to come alive now. The other riders have a target to aim for. Albert Cabastan gets through the first 2 sections with 2 marks dropped, and that puts a target on his back as the other 3 will all look to go better through section 2. Next up, Gironi Fajardo hasn't won an X-Trial event since his debut season back in 2005. Hoping that a move to Vertigo will reignite his form, and he certainly showed a lot of that in the qualifying stage. He's now on to section 2, needs to get the better of Albert Cabastan, who dropped 2 marks through this section. He's negotiated the first step and ramp easily enough. This is where Albert Cabastan dropped his first mark of the day. Gironi Fajardo through cleanly. That's an excellent start for Gironi Fajardo. This is where Cabastan dropped his second mark, just sliding down the side of this block that's angled away from the riders. Fajardo puts his front wheel up onto the peak of that block and avoids sliding down by dipping the back wheel, and will now fire himself up to close out the section. Clean on observation, inside on time, 50.9 seconds, comfortably inside as well, and that's 2 sections clean for Gironi Fajardo. Learning from the errors of Albert Cabastan, and now 2 marks ahead of his veteran competitor. Adam Raga will look to replicate that scoring now from Gironi Fajardo to maintain his position tied at the top of the standings. 3 riders yet to drop a mark, 2 riders still to go on this section 2. Adam Raga, who suffered such a disappointing Sheffield round last season, and that really didn't set him up well for the remainder of the X-Trial campaign, despite his late season victory. In 2016, he needs to get off to a much better start. So far, so good through section number 2. Watched on by his minder, encouraging him to take it one step at a time, slowly and meticulously. One more step to negotiate. And Adam Raga will be through clean as well. So that's Gironi Fajardo and Adam Raga through section 2 clean. Albert Cabastan dropping 2 marks. Tony Bow next up. Each of his 6 career appearances here in Sheffield in X-Trial competition have seen him come out as the victor. Actually looking to match Dougie Lampkin's all-time British Grand Prix record that stands at 7 victories. More X-Trial wins than any other rider, of course, Tony Bow, with a record number of 45. Shown a couple of signs of weakness here today. He was beaten in qualifying, beaten again in the tie-break double lane races by Gironi Fajardo. But he did manage to get himself the best seeding position for the final by winning 3 consecutive double lane races. And he's therefore last out for the final. Oh, Tony Bow slipped off the blocks, completely unannounced. And that is going to be a very costly 5 as Tony Bow slips to the bottom of the standings. A grimace on his face, as much out of shock as it is out of frustration, as Tony Bow slips 5 marks behind his main rivals for this final, Adam Raga and Gironi Fajardo, and 3 marks behind Albert Cabastan. Just a question of whether Bow can make up those 5 marks now over the remaining 4 sections. Or will he be battling for one of the minor positions on the podium? Real shock here in Sheffield. It's similar to what happened in the qualifying stage when Bow dropped a surprise 5 early on the lap, and he then had to make it up in the remainder of the qualifying lap. Couldn't do so. Can he do so in the final, where the difficulty level might be a little less accessible? Albert Cabastan now onto section 3. He's going to use a mark there, resting the bike on the sump before he hauls himself up to the top of those canisters. 2 steps up towards the section's highest point, and then 2 genuine jumps over to the finish. The cylinders at the back end of the section really posing their own challenge here. Fresh paint, a checkered plate finish, and a curved surface, which means there's an incredibly narrow contact patch for the tyre. But Albert Cabastan is through, and that's just the single mark from that leaning early on in the section. So he moves on to 3. He's still ahead of Tony Bow, with the reigning champion still yet to ride this section 3. Gironi Fajardo next up. Clean in his opening 2 sections and tied with Adam Raga. But he's immediately dropped a mark, and now Albert Cabastan didn't drop anything there. So a poor start to section 3 for Gironi Fajardo, just on the first of those 2 big steps, having to lean the bike before pulling himself to the top. Let's see if he can avoid dropping a mark here. This is where Albert Cabastan dropped his only mark of section 3. Well, he's up, but it is going to take a mark on observation. Leaning at the top of those canisters, and now down the other side. He's going to make the flick across and onto the last cylinder run, but he's sliding down the side, foot down and off the back of the cylinder, and a dramatic 5, and one that sounded pretty painful as well for Gironi Fajardo, who cried out as he went down. That's 2 riders now on 5 marks. Albert Cabastan moves provisionally up to 2nd. Adam Raga and Tony Bow still to come on section 3. Well, I was talking about the fresh paint and the minimal surface area of these cylinders, and Gironi Fajardo fell victim to it. Just didn't quite nab the landing and slipped off the side of the cylinder. And that does give Adam Raga an opportunity to become a clear leader at the midway point of this grand final. If he can do any better than 3 marks here, he'll be a clear leader with 3 sections remaining. Step 1 achieved, and without dropping a mark. Kabastan had already managed that. Nobody's made it up clean to the top of this canister so far, but Adam Raga has. Excellent riding once again in the final, just as he did in qualifying, looking superb. The form-man, seemingly, of today's event. The top dog in qualifying, he doesn't even make it by using a turn. He just jumps across to the cylinder ramps. And this is a rider high on confidence, who's going to be the clear leader in Sheffield at the halfway distance of the grand final. Raga clean, Kabastan on 3. Bo and Fajardo have each dropped a section there on 5. But it does give Tony Bo an opportunity to move into a provisional tied 3rd place if he can run clean here through section number 3. Adam Raga's just managed it. Bo, just to maintain that 5-mark deficit, now has to do the same. He's placed himself under a lot of pressure here because he can't afford to drop any marks, quite simply, with Adam Raga riding so very well. The machine purring as he prepares his build up to the 2nd step of this one, section number 3. The minder marking where he wants him to land and constantly updating him on the time. He can't afford to drop a mark on time. But both of the riders who've completed this section so far have been well inside on time. And I can't see that being any different for Tony Bo, the king of speed here in Sheffield. Takes the same approach as Adam Raga to bouncing across the cylinders. No slip-ups on section 3. Oh, there was almost one there, but he does get through. 49.7 seconds, Tony Bo well inside on time. Takes a clean in section 3, so halfway through the final. And we've got Adam Raga yet to drop a mark. Albert Kabastan on 3, Gironi Fajardo and Tony Bo, who've each failed a section, on 5. Onto the Red Bull section, the biggest challenge here, the first step. Really acute ramp onto the top of the red globe. Albert Kabastan, the first rider to settle himself in, currently 2nd in the standings here in Sheffield. Launches himself up to the top. Oh, the minder's caught his front wheel. And I don't think Kabastan is too happy about that. I wonder if he wanted to try and jump backwards and have a 2nd attempt at making the ramp. He wasn't quite happy enough with his run-up, but his minder touching the bike means he's out for a 5 in section number 4. Dropping to the bottom of the standings, so that's 3 riders now who've all failed 1 section. Adam Raga looking ever more comfortable here in Sheffield. He's got 3 sections to see through. Gironi Fajardo next up to that big ramp. He gets over it, but he does have to use a mark, leaning the sump at the top of the step, and that's 1 mark on observation. Riders who make it past that initial step then have to negotiate the lettering of this Red Bull section and this large wood stack on their way to the final blue sphere. On the other side, on the way through in qualifying, of course, the riders took it in the opposite direction, so these are effectively completely new sections to the riders. But in the reverse direction, this stack had 3 steps. On the way back for the final, increased level of difficulty. Only 1 step to bounce up. Gironi Fajardo hauls himself up to the top. That's super stuff from Gironi Fajardo through section 4 with 1 mark so far. Remember, Albert Kabastan dropped to 5 here. Fajardo set to move 2 marks clear of Albert Kabastan, and does so. Just a single mark on observation for Gironi Fajardo. Just over a 2nd inside on time as he moves on to 6 marks now. That does drop him provisionally behind Tony Bo as well, but Bo still has to ride the section, of course. Adam Raga yet to drop a mark, but he's dropped 1 now. None of the riders have managed to get through that ramp without dropping a mark. That initial step is pretty severe, and it has a sharp top as well. Raga just pivoting over the top of it, now through the Red Bull lettering. And onto this wooden stack. Gironi Fajardo just about made it, but it really was a physical effort. Adam Raga next up. Already more podium finishes than any other rider in X-Trail competition. The 4 times world champion of this discipline. Observer has 1 mark so far for Adam Raga, his first mark of the day. This is the easier part of the section, but Raga still must ensure that he doesn't drop any silly marks here. He should be through on time. And down the other side, 57.1 seconds, and Adam Raga drops just 1 mark. The deficit narrowed to just 4, but Tony Bowe does still have to negotiate this section 4. He'll be desperate to record a clean here and keep himself in the hunt for the victory. Each time that Raga gets through a section well, Tony Bowe loses a little bit more time to make up the difference. He has been awarded a mark despite hesitating only briefly on the top of that step. The sump did touch the top, and that is going to cost him a mark on observation. So now, just to put things all back at a 5-mark deficit, he needs to get through the remainder of the section clean. That hasn't posed any of the riders too much difficulty so far. Fajardo straining and stretching to the top of this wooden stack. Tony Bowe sets himself up, not diagonally, he wants to have a bit of a run up to this. Makes it look so easy. When it's a physical step like that, there's no one better than Tony Bowe, and that's how he's managed to rack up the X-Trial victories and World Championships. As easy as you like, 50.8 seconds, but he does concede a mark on observation, and that puts him back level with Gironi Fajardo on 6, tied for second place after a failure there on that section for Albert Cabestan, who drops to 4th on 8. Cabestan the first to ride section number 5. Can't afford another 5-mark score here, or he will drop out of mathematical contention for first position. 2 main steps here, each the height of 2 containers. The first one sloped away from the rider, but he does get to the top without dropping a mark, without clipping the top of that skip. And this is the second step. He's going to take it potentially in 2 stages here. Try and bound his way to the top. Needs to try and run clean to remain in contention for today's victory. Up to the top nicely for Albert Cabestan. Looking comfortable on time as well. Runner-up here last year. Can he go better in 2016? Cabestan is through section number 5 without dropping a mark. 47.2 seconds. So he remains on 8. Still in mathematical contention for victory. He will rely on other results going his way, though, because he's bottom of the standings after 5 completed sections for Albert Cabestan. Gironi Fajardo is next up through the skips. Needs lower than a 2-mark score to head into the final section ahead of Albert Cabestan. At the moment, there's a significant deficit between first and second. Raga leading the way quite comfortably, the only rider who hasn't failed a section as yet. Both Fajardo and Cabestan have all failed one. Unless Raga drops a section, you can't see him dropping out of that lead position here. Looking very comfortable, the TRS rider. It's been a good vertigo debut for Gironi Fajardo so far as well. Now building up to the second step on the skip section, but he slips back. 2 feet down, Gironi Fajardo is out of section 5 with a 5-mark score. Drops to the bottom of the standings now behind Albert Cabestan, who got through clean. And that may have just shaken up the battle for the podium positions. Gironi Fajardo scoring 5 marks more there than Albert Cabestan, drops behind him in the leaderboard. 2 riders still to go on section number 5. Anything less than 2 marks for Adam Raga here will make the trial a 2-horse race now between Raga and Bowe after that failure for Fajardo and drop marks earlier on around the lap for Albert Cabestan. Just 1 mark dropped so far for Adam Raga. Step number 1 achieved, flicks the back wheel up to ensure that he doesn't drop a mark on observation. Cheered on by the supporters here in Sheffield. They really have got behind him tonight. This arena is usually pro Tony Bowe, but tonight Adam Raga has been the rider to receive a great deal of the applause. He's done plenty to deserve it as well. What an outstanding effort so far. He's going to drop a mark there. Stops on the sump at the top of the section, but hauls himself up, perhaps just making sure. And through to the completion of section number 5 in 49.6 seconds. That's just a single mark on observation there. 2 for the entire lap so far for Adam Raga, but an opportunity here for Tony Bowe to gain back the smallest amount of ground Mathematically speaking, he can only afford a maximum of 1 mark here, or he will drop out of the race for a 7th consecutive Sheffield win. But he's got an opportunity to restrict the deficit to 4 marks coming into the final section if he can run clean through this one, section 5. Adam Ragger couldn't do so. This will go down to the final section if Tony Bowe can keep up his efforts. That 5-mark score in section 2. But for that, we would be in for a very, very close finale. Instead, Adam Ragger 4 marks clear after an error from Bowe earlier on in the lap. Comfortable for time. Bowe needs to make sure here. Does so. Doesn't drop a mark at the top of the second step. And that's going to give him an opportunity to restrict that margin to 4 marks coming into the final section. Tony Bowe is through clean on section 5. And with 1 section still remaining, we've got 2 distinct battles here. The battle for first between Ragger and Bowe. It's now a 2-horse race. And a separate encounter between Fajardo and Cabestan for that final step of the podium. Of course, Bowe could still potentially slip out of that 2nd position and down as far as 4th. Albert Cabestan comes into section 6. The Trunks and Rocks, the longest of the sections, so perfect for a grandstand finale here tonight. Cabestan can guarantee 3rd position by notching 2 marks or fewer here. To remain in contention for 2nd, he can afford a maximum of 3. Dramatic final section, as I've already said, it's the longest of them here tonight. 10 rock islands separated by 2 large trunks. This is the first of them. The biggest challenge will be the upright log, marking the section's halfway point. The shortest of run-ups. And what a step it is. Albert Cabestan will be the first rider to tackle it. If he gets through this section clean, then he's guaranteed 3rd position. What can he do on this step? Minder watching on. He's up and he's caught. He couldn't get the front wheel over the crest of that trunk, and Albert Cabestan drops to a 5. He will move on to a final lap total of 13, and he will now be relying on Gironi Fajardo to slip up as well to have a hope of getting onto the podium. He's out of the race now for the top 2 positions. Albert Cabestan can, mathematically speaking, only finish a maximum of 3rd now, and that will depend on the results here of Gironi Fajardo, who could snatch 3rd position from Cabestan if he notches just a single mark through this section. To have a hope of 2nd place, Fajardo needs to run clean because he's 5 marks down on Tony Bowe. The main events here will be whether Fajardo can make it over that step. That looks the hardest of the obstacles in this one, section number 6. Gironi Fajardo made every final last season. He only converted 2 into a podium finish. Can he convert his first final of the 2016 season into a podium finish? A different approach here to what Albert Cabestan did. He's jumped onto the 2nd of the rocks and he's going to try and spear himself up to the top of the step, but he slipped backwards and almost drops off the back of the rock entirely. 2nd attempt. He's got himself balanced. What a supreme physical effort that is just to get the bike as high as he did, but that approach and tactic didn't work either. And Albert Cabestan takes 3rd position tonight here in Sheffield. Gironi Fajardo's failure through section 6, seeing him drop off the podium. The damage was done earlier on, really, for Fajardo. Failing through section 5, proving costly because Cabestan went clean through the section, jumped above him in the standings, and remains above him to the finish. 2 riders failing on section 6 so far, just not able to make it up that massive mid-section step. And that could be an opportunity for Tony Bowe. Adam Ragger is up first. He can guarantee the victory with 3 marks or fewer here. But if he fails that step, it gives Tony Bowe an opportunity to snatch back the win in the very final section of the night. A hush has descended here at the Sheffield Arena. The pressure is on. The 33-year-old from Tarragona in Spain, Adam Ragger, with an opportunity to get the better of Tony Bowe in Sheffield for the first time ever. He's carved out this opportunity beautifully through qualifying and now through the final as well, where he's 4 marks up on Tony Bowe. The crowd are cheering him on. This is the moment. The toughest element of section number 6. Can Adam Ragger make it? Up he goes, he's done it! Adam Raga to the top of the step to the cheers of the crowd in Sheffield. And now he's just got to keep calm to the finish of section number 6. Adam Raga clean so far on section number 6. The time is going to elapse. He's not going to make it in 60, surely. He's just going to make sure. In fact, his minder has just told him. 60 seconds have elapsed. Adam Raga one step away. Wins in Sheffield 2016. What a stunning start to the campaign. And a dream debut for the TRS machine as Adam Raga, in his first individual event on the bike, takes victory at the Sheffield Arena. Well, Tony Bowe still has to take on this section number 6. All of tonight's finishing positions already decided. Bowe just looking to become the first rider to clean this section. I suppose it's more about his own pride now and a bit of a confidence booster, because beaten by Adam Raga on the opening night of the campaign is far from an ideal start for Tony Bowe, and he has a tradition of getting off to a morale-boosting start to every season here in Sheffield. He hasn't done it in 2016. Bowe will have to ride 18 seconds faster than Raga to pull off a clean in section number 6, which will just make the victory margin look less emphatic. Can he make it over this step that posed 2 of the riders such difficulties and on which Adam Raga excelled? Tony Bowe is up. Clean so far on section number 6. He has got time pressure if he wants to make it through with a 0. He's going to rush the close of the section here. But even so, he's a second behind on time. 61 seconds for Tony Bowe, but it matters little. It's the difference of 1 mark when he's been beaten by 4. Adam Raga, the winner here in Sheffield.
Tony Bowe, and your winner today, Adam Raga.
With just 4 dropped marks in 12 sections, Adam Raga takes a well-deserved victory in Sheffield. Tony Bowe does well to recover to 2nd, but an error-strewn performance cost him the win. Albert Cabastan with 2 failed sections and Gironi Fajardo with 3 dropped back in the latter stages of the final. I came here today with the intention of fighting for something more. I think my riding in pre-season preparation has been better than what you've seen here in Sheffield. I started well in qualifying, but the double lane races didn't go well. I struggled with a few sections in the final and it didn't turn out as well as I hoped. Without a few of those mistakes, I could have challenged for the victory, which is what I'd like to do now in the coming races. Today it wasn't to be an easy trial. I made a mistake in section 2 from which I couldn't recover. I tried, but it was already too late. So I have to congratulate Adam for a brilliant ride and think about Barcelona. I'm very happy to have won this race, which puts me into the lead. I have to thank the whole team who've done a fantastic job in the last few months. They've been hard months with a lot of work, but this is the reward. Despite several surprises during the night, the form book is largely respected in the championship scoring. A rare X-Trial victory for Adam Raga, though, gives him the perfect start to the season. In a year of change with 2 of the top 4 on new machinery, Tony Bowe is beaten for the first time in Sheffield. Albert Cabastan and Gironi Fajardo both showed moments of promise, but the only rider to come through the day without 1 failed section is the round 1 winner and new championship leader, Adam Raga.
We will see you again.